and wondering about locusts in East Africa, and from that thinking about the effect of the locust invasion on African agriculture. Hello, Enoch, in general. So I don't know if you, Calvin or Rosario, do you want to explain what you wanted to know and what you wanted to speak about?
Oh, hi, Professor.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Yeah, we were talking the other day about what was happening in the Horn of Africa and the Gulf countries, and we were wondering if we could do a meeting like this, because we know the problem there now is it's quite big. These swarms are eating everything green that there is where they are, and they are all in the whole Gulf countries now, East Africa. Now they reach Pakistan, and well, they're spreading. They're spreading.
They're
fast.
amazing.
Yeah. And yes, we were wondering what was happening there, and if we could discuss a little bit about the problems of these swarms are causing in these countries.
So yeah.
Yes.
Calvin?
The other thing, I mean, how we initiated this whole topic was that we were thinking.
Sorry, excuse me, I was late. Please excuse
don't
me.
worry. We're just explaining. Calvin and Rosario were explaining why they wanted to organize this Aperitempo and what they wanted to know. So the first thing that Rosario was explaining was all related to the locust and what they are doing from the Middle East and Pakistan to East Africa. And now Calvin was explaining that also.
Yes, we thought about how horrible it must be for people to have to go, first of all, through coronavirus, and then at the same time now have to deal with the locust, and also taking in consideration the fact that these are some of the countries with that are like have a shortage of food. And some of them are it's even much more harder for them to produce food because some of them is a complete desert. And we imagine how this can affect the agriculture in those places, and how people can possibly deal with such a problem. Maybe like we wanted to think about solution. I mean, like we're not in a position to do much, but we can at least talk about these things and try to think about them. We think about how threatening this could be to food security and local biodiversity in these places.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Yeah, my proposal is to go like this, because I've been reading in the last days about locust, just to try to build in my mind an overall picture of locust and their biology and all the associated facts. And so I would, if you all agree, I would start speaking about locust. So from there, then we get to the effect and the consequences on Africa and all those countries' livelihoods and on agriculture. So also Paolo, Charlotte, then. Because I have to say that if reading about locusts, if you don't think about how disastrous they are incredibly fascinating. And the first thing that one discovers is that there are many species, and they are the grasshoppers. So it's not that grasshoppers and locusts are different species. It's that there are some species of grasshoppers that have the magical ability to transform themselves in locusts. And when I was reading about locusts, the Japanese cartoon Shoko the Japanese cartoon. When I was a kid, I used to watch Jig Robot-Acciaio. Do you know this Jig that was transforming himself into a robot? And well, locusts, they really have this ability. And but this ability is given by serotonin. This is the other very interesting aspect. We get serotonin is what defines our mood, no? And we become more social. Usually, if you have high levels of serotonin, we become depressed and self-isolate if we have low level. I'm generalizing, but it works exactly the same with locusts. The more locusts there are in a patch of land, the more grasshoppers, if you want, and they become locusts, but let's call them locusts. The more there are, the more they bump into each other. And for every time one locust meet another, is building up a bit more serotonin inside its body. And with this building up of serotonin, they start changing morphologically, like wings become longer, they have an ability to fly, but especially they become social. They start grouping, moving all into a same direction, getting very close to each other because of all this serotonin building up. And so from if we have a situation in which in some tens square kilometers in an area that usually, if we speak about the desert locust, the range of these locusts, where they usually live, is a stripe that of land along the Sahel that goes from West Africa, let's say Mauritania, Senegal. It runs all across Africa and then into the Middle East and part of Pakistan. They usually live there. They live as grasshoppers, solitary, living a solitary life, laying eggs underground. But then sometimes there are climatic situations in which we have, for example, a period of drought, 1-2 years without rain, and then 1 year that is very rainy with a big flash of rain. The young grasshopper comes out, they start eating a lot because they find a lot of green grass. At the beginning, they are nymph, so they can't fly really. But the more they eat, the more they consume the vegetation, the more they are, and the more they start bumping into each other in the patches of vegetation that remains. And if they are many and then they run out of green food to eat there, they start grouping and started moving. When they are nymph, they move walking. So you have to imagine an army, a walking army of millions of hoppers. They are called like this when they can't fly yet. And they usually, when they can't fly, they move downhill or they move still with the wind, because the wind are those that brings rain. So even when they are adult and they fly with the wind, because that wind will bring clouds somewhere and rain in another area that they can reach and they can eat there. So it's not necessarily this the solitary grasshopper become locust.
Questo è il professore.
Only i commenti. Paolo, you have the microphone on. Yes. You should turn off your microphone. Yes, great. And well, so in the right condition, when you have a long rainy season, a lot of flashes, and then the grasshopper, they can find another green area where the rain came, and they can reproduce also there. And when they start being many in a single place, they then start swarming together. Is this swarming of billions at the end of locusts that is flying with the wind, and it's like rolling over the ground, because you have this cloud of hundreds of square kilometers of locusts. The front of the cloud of locusts is always landing, starting to eating, while above part of the cloud will pass, and then the one that they ate, they start flying again. So it's a cloud rolling over the land that is eating everything. I witnessed a locust invasion in Western Sahara when I was there with the PhD, and they left. There was funny enough, there was only one plant that they didn't touch at all, and that was the oleander. That is a famously toxic plant, but it's the only one. There was nothing green left after they passed, but the oleander that was left untouched. And with locust, like with many of the big problems that we find ourselves in now, human activities have of course contribute to this, because especially this invasion of locust, this outbreak of locust of this year, since 2019, 2020, is very much connected with an aspect of climate change that is called the Indian dipole. That is a warming up of the Indian Ocean, that it doesn't warm up evenly across the Indian Ocean, but it was mapped more in its western part. And this creates a climatic dynamics for which we have heavy rains in East Africa and part of the Arabian Peninsula, and drought and wildfires in Australia, as we saw some months ago. And these heavy rains in Yemen, in Saudi Arabia, and then in part of the Horn of Africa have favored this outbreak of locust. Usually, they are kept under control, in the sense that when the hoppers start to form in Saudi Arabia or in desertic areas, if you can identify that the band of non-flying locusts are starting aggregating, what usually is done is to spray them with a plane to kill the risk of outbreak before. Once you have an outbreak of adult locusts, there is nothing you can do. It's really, I mean, you can see people that are burning tire of the car in front of their house, so that the smoke maybe is scaring the locust, but the locust will just go to the next farm and come back to this farm when the smoke is finished. So I was reading that there has been an attempt in Tanzania of seeding locust with the parasitic fungi. And it had, yeah, Paula, do you know about this? Maybe then you can explain better. I didn't go into that. What happens that from these tribes where they usually live, when there is an outbreak, they start to move latitudinally up and down from these tribes. So the outbreaks occupies also Kenya, Tanzania, part of Uganda, that they are not really in the range where usually the solitary grasshopper of this species live. But they can move also north. And I was reading about an invasion of locusts in Capua, in south of Italy, during the Roman Empire. And they can move across the desert. So the famous outbreak of Mauritania of about 10, 15 years ago, those locusts, they have been able to cross all the Sahara Desert from west to east, and they ended up in Pakistan. And even there are reports of locusts that after crossing the Sahara Desert, this time from east to west, they kept going and they ended up in the Caribbean. So they are amazing. They can fly up to 2 kilometers above the ground. So what we see of a locust swarming is just the below part, but there is a density that goes from ground to 2,000 meters up. And okay, this was the interesting part. Notice how locust invasion also. No, what I forgot is because usually they are sprayed as hoppers, you have the situation in which political instability in those countries where there can be an outbreak is favoring heavily the locust outbreak. The war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, or better, more than war, the bombing, outright bombing of Saudi Arabia into Yemen has caused there a political instability that for 2018 did not allow this level of control of the locust exactly in the place where the outbreak started, that is what looks to be like a South Saudi Arabia, close to the border with Yemen. So you have a lot of different factors piling up. It was kind of funny to see how the same progression of the COVID-19 from local outbreak to epidemic to pandemic, you find it in the life cycle of locust, that they start from forming this band of hoppers that are local and eat the vegetation locally, and then they form what are called absurds, that are bigger groups, and then the many groups, they form a swarm that is the pandemic, let's say, level of locust. In history, locusts have been also a source of food for many Bedouins, desert nomads, and still now many agriculturalists of the Sahel, they consume both grasshopper and locust. And but they were also connected with pandemic, real pandemic, and this link that I found was I didn't expect it. But the problem was that in the Middle Age and even in the years before, every time that a swarm of locusts would pass, then you would have millions of dead locusts on the floor. And this would have attracted a lot of small rodents, rats, and mice. So often you had a co-occurrence of locust swarming with the plague, the Yersinia pestis plague, because of rats building up their numbers, feeding from the dead locust. So yeah, it was a bad omen also in if you want, and the locusts are, you can find the references to it. Hello, Nicola, if you can turn off the micro, yeah. And you can find the references to locusts in the Quran, in the Bible, in all the main also religious books, because of their huge role in bringing not just food scarcity, but really famine and a lot of death. Because it was when a swarm of locusts will come, it's really it looks impossible to defend not only crops, but the same heavy effect it has on pastoralists, because locusts are eating away all the pastures. So then cows, camels, they find themselves without food, and there is then a big problem in feeding these animals. So many pastoralists end up totally losing the herd. So yes, these are the different thing about locusts, and yes, now this year they arrived to Kenya. When I was in Kenya in January, they were up in Marsabit. so Kenya to the border with Ethiopia, but they were south and southwest, both toward the Rift Valley and west toward Uganda. Because at the time there was still rain all over East Africa because of this too long than usual rainy season. That was the effect of this warming of the Indian Ocean and of all the clouds that would come into East Africa from east, and this same path would be followed by locusts moving with the wind. But I didn't witness that where they were referring, but when in January still locusts were in pastoralist area, so in quite semi-arid areas, and they were affecting mainly pastoralist group. From there, in the last month, they moved into more agricultural areas, and both in Uganda, Kenya, I didn't keep total track of where they are now. And as long as they find that they can follow incipient rains and find enough green vegetation, they will keep swarming. At some point, the condition will not be favorable anymore, and it will literally fade slowly, not so slowly, but fade. And then we get back to, they get back all the solitary to reproduce normally until the condition pile up again to make an outbreak even in other regions. Yes, yes, Paola.
No, let's say maybe if you are interested, I can say something about the, let's say, biological control. It's okay. Okay. Because of course, let's say when there is such an emergency, it's really very difficult to convince government and also farmer, of course, because let's say, as we all know, the use of chemicals is considered an easy solution and somehow ready to be used. So very often governments all over the world, in Africa, in India, in Brazil, in Bolivia, have used massive chemicals spraying by airplane. But I hope that you are all aware also after our courses. Now let's say that those spraying cause also a lot of environmental damage long term, and not less also direct chronic disease to all people that come into touch to these chemicals. So it's a very severe short and long-term effect. Of course, famine, it's even more short, we all agree. On the other hand, since 80s, I would say 90s, there have been a lot of studies on biological control on different grasshopper species and locusts. Many species in Italy, so the Marocchinos, the Italicus, the Aegyptum, so the different species of those genera have been studied and have been studied in local environment, in natural environment, what are their competitor and what are their predators. So there have been some insect, for example, in Italy, there is a grilli, Entomophage grilli, and also another Beauveria paussiana, that is a fungi that have been in, let's say, more or less in natural environment, important control agents. In Spain, there was found some part of Bacillus thuringiensis, that is a fungi, also another fungi. And recently, let's say recently, I'm speaking about 15 years ago, another fungi agent that is called Metarhizium anisophile have been selected and used. So now also FAO is promoting these fungi a lot. and is considered the best biopesticides to control hoppers and locusts, in particular the desert locust. So this fungi is spread with the use of an oil. So it's an oil that, again, also in the oil there is a lot of discussion, because one thing is if you use chemical oil, I mean extract from fuel, or if we use a vegetable oil, for example canola or another, no? So the impact, of course, it's much different. Anyhow, so instead of using diesel oil, it's possible to use more natural oil. Anyhow, what is needed is 1 liter of oil per hectare, so it's not huge. And of course there is a lot of let's say the function, the efficiency of this biocontrol, biopesticide depends a lot on many issues. First of all, what is the correct dose, so the concentration of the spore of the fungi within this oil, let's say. Another things, of course, is also the temperature, and if when they spray there is a big coverage in terms of leaves of trees, no? So if the oil physically reach the insect, no, and cover the insect. And third, the most important thing is the time of action, because the chemical pesticides generally it's very fast. Let's say in 2 days they kill the animal. The spore, so the fungi, needs between 1 week till sometimes even 20 days. So of course it takes some time to react. On the other hand, there is zero environmental impact and zero effect on humans and in any target other insect. So it's completely, let's say, safe in terms of use. So I completely agree with Gabriele, with Professor Volpato, that if the governments and the farmer have some times to let's say prepare, no? So to use also these means, this treatment in advance, let's say ready, no? As soon as possible. Also FAO there is a lot of video also you can or I can share here maybe. The effect is, let's say, 90% of the coverage, no? So benefit. If of course the let's say the treatment is late and maybe not efficient, not done in the full area, not done in the proper way, it's less effective. Okay, so let's say it's very important how, like in organic, you know, because I already give you a lot of information. Let's say if you are very efficient in the use of the biopesticides, the efficient can increase a lot. Anyhow, there is sometimes of more time, no, to kill the animal. Maybe I would like to share a nice video that I have found here in the chat, and you can maybe leave it later. Anyhow, it's made by FAO, and explain how important would be the use of those biopesticides that does not have any chronic and long-term effect. Then, of course, also other conditions, let's say already, the climate change, of course, affect a lot this instability, no, between pest and predators relationship, you know, because it's let's say there was a lot of favorable condition to develop the locust population. So they have a lot of natural enemies in natural environment. Rats, birds eat a lot of locusts or many others, also humans. So there is a control, but of course the difficulties is timing and you know, when the curve will decrease, like COVID, you know, exactly. So it's an epidemic that are, of course, causing a lot of food insecurity and famine and death of people, 25,000 of people in each country, no? So what else I can say? Bob, I don't know. Maybe there are some questions.
So there are
a
questions.
question.
Giovanni?
Yeah, you want to go first?
No. I was just saying.
Hello.
Hello, ciao
Okay.
Giovanni.
Ciao.
Giovanni,
To the professor.
do you have a question?
Yes. The oil is used just to prevent like mix with water, or just oil?
No,
It's mixed with water.
no, it's just oil. And you know, because this the spore needs to become adhesive in
Okay.
so in order
Don't use
to
anymore?
touch the skin of the animal. And
Okay.
so I have read, I'm not, let's say, I've never used it. I'm not, let's say, I'm not an expert in research about this issue, but I read several papers about it, and there was for many years a lot of discussion about the correct dose, the concentration of the spore within the oil.
Thank you.
And Paola, this fungi is specifically killing the desert locust, or
Yes.
what range? Yes.
No, let's say it was particularly effective in the desert locust. It was already tested also in Greece, and if I'm not wrong, also in Spain. But yes, it's specific for the desert locust.
And I have a question also for this pesticide, this fungi. When you attach to the locust, is it possible to the locust to carry this to a different swarm?
Oh dear, sorry, I had a noise.
Is it possible for a swarm of locusts to take these spores and bring it to other locust population? For instance, in, I don't know, to take a swarm in Kenya and spread it with this spore, and then they could take it to Somalia, to places where they cannot spray it because of civil war.
Let's say, for sure, I don't have a 100% sure question, but anyhow, my answer is this: for sure they will bring the spore with them, but the amount, the quantity is not maybe enough to have an effective cover. This is what I think. Let's say, in order to really, because it's already a little bit weak, no? The effectiveness. So for sure they will bring some, because in maybe 2 weeks they move, no? In 10 days they move, so they will spread. The fungi will kill inside, but anyhow, again, it takes some time. So for sure some spore will be spread, but maybe it's not effective to control the population in a reasonable amount of time. So they need to spray anyhow.
Is this fungi relative Cordyceps sinensis? There is this famous caterpillar. It's a fungi that parasite a caterpillar, and then the fruiting body grows from the caterpillar in the Himalaya. And it is very famous for the traditional Chinese medicine. So in the last, let's say, 20 years, I found some papers about it. There has been a huge demand for this mushroom, because it's the fruiting body. Mm-hmm. And the price is increased, the level of harvesting increased. And so now they are in the situation which the government, I think, is Nepal, Tibet. They are trying to regulate the harvest, but they find it hard in connection with the huge demand and high prices. But I can put the name here.
I didn't know this. I never
because it looks like it acts similar. So that's why I was wondering.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. This is called Metarhizium acridum, and it's specific for Schistochecra gregaria, so the desert locust.
It's only biologists like us that like to write the scientific name. Everybody else is watching like, what's that?
But again, the dose is very important, because it can be the concentration of the conidia could be between 0 and 75,000. Okay, so in a dose. So, and of course affect also the economic and so the cost of the biopesticides.
Also, for more information about fungi and fungi pesticides, there is this gentleman called Paul Statements that he works on this sort of things. He's a mycologist from the US, and
Alex is a fan of him. Alex,
yeah,
he's a fan of him.
He's amazing. He has done amazing things with fungi, and it's cool to check him out also for this type of pests.
I would like to say fungi are the most underrated living beings, at least from us.
Yes.
But they are a marvelous world, and I was reading in a book they were saying that if in a second all the plants and animals of the planet would disappear, still their shape would be there with the hyphae, with the filament of all the fungi that are covering all the world. They are really underrated. And we should, Paula was saying, it would be nice to have an optional course about mycology, ethnomycology, mushroom, stuff like this. Is that I don't have enough knowledge. Paula maybe has.
I don't. I offer one day to Alex in my course. I host one day from Alex that gives some short things because we have always lack of hours. But anyhow, one small half day is done by Alex inside my course, but it's not enough, of course.
Rebecca, would you like an optional like this? So if I find myself with 5 months that I don't know what to do, I will start reading about fungi and mushroom and then try to build one. And
anyhow, maybe, you know that there is a concrete project by Alex to develop fungi in the garden. He did the thesis with me under this. He developed an experiment in the garden. He grew physically a lot of mushroom. And
I have to go.
Oh yes.
Rebecca, did you know? Did you know about the fact that Alex is growing different mushroom in the garden? Well, okay, yes, maybe. But if you have many questions about the fungi, otherwise I would try to think to go on with the reasoning and think in terms of the impact of this. Especially, I guess that we are interested on the impact on smallholders.
I am definitely interested in having a mycology conversation, if that's possible in the future.
Okay. Let's do it. And Arlette, yes, let's do one. And we can invite also Alex and other people that know. And I agree with the topic.
Also, I was reading how this fungi pesticides works in certain colonies, such as ants or mites. And these workers ants, they just grab the spores and bring it back to the colony, and the spores then in the colony will develop and transform into mycelium. The mycelium will colonize the whole colony and will mummify everything inside. So it will kill all the ants without doing any other harm to soil or other creatures.
This unless the ants are able to domesticate the fungi, and then how some species of ants do, they bring leaves to the fungi to eat, and then they feed from the mycelium.
Yeah, it's the dogma of biology. Let's say there is always an evolution, but it's longer than resistant to chemicals. Sorry, I am with the kids. So yes.
So I don't know, Calvin or Rosario, did were you reading anything about the actual impact of the locusts on the livelihoods of Kenyan, Ugandan, Ethiopian? Yemenite farmers, pastoralists?
Yes, we collect some information from how did it started, some facts that could have made this worse than, such as the Yemen war and the Somalian civil war, and well, cyclones that helped spread the swarms across East Africa and help them to get to places such as Uganda that we haven't seen them before, or in this many groups there. This is something unusual, and yes, it's affecting livelihood around East Africa, the Gulf countries, and now it's hitting Pakistan, and especially to pastoralism, because a lot of pastoralists in this area depend on green grasses that they just move around through the Rift Valley, for example, looking for grass for their livestock. And a lot of these animals have died out of hunger, and they even found the locusts inside their stomachs. There are so many, and yeah, people are not dealing with this properly. Kenya recently ran out of pesticides to spread. FAO proposed $153 million funding for just this area, and without considering Pakistan, that they just got there, and is one of the countries being more affected about this. For sure, this will affect everyone, even us. With the COVID-19, we learned that things that happen over there, they also get over here. They also get where you are. This will affect, for sure, even Europe and Asia, because a lot of food is being produced there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Within other stuff.
The other interest.
Who's speaking? Calvin, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that the other interesting thing was
your microphone is a bit distorted.
we were not the first time. They were not surprised to see them.
Can you lower the volume of your device?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just saying that it was interesting on one of the pages that they were saying it's not surprising for some of the countries to have these locusts because they happen every year. What was more harder to deal with was the fact that there was much more than what they expected in terms of the numbers, and that they could not control it the same way that they used to control them in the past couple of years. I mean, in Kenya, they say that it hasn't happened in the last 70 years. This is the first time that they're dealing with it. And you can imagine some of the farmers that came after this 70 years, they don't know how to deal with them. So it's a little bit interesting to see how the government also is trying to, what the government would advise farmers to do or to deal with this problem. But the other thing is that most of the small scale producers, especially in the rurals, they don't really have the equipments. They don't have the capacity to deal with this amount of locusts. So I think it's going to be even worse for them to deal with. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes until June. And a lot of papers were suggesting that if they don't deal with until June, then it's going to be much more than what it is today. So yeah.
Yeah, when I was in Kenya in January, I see there is Eric. Hi, Eric. If you want to, if you have something to say, something that you know firsthand, join and speak. When I was in Kenya in January, it was almost planting season, if I'm not wrong, and they were postponing a bit the planting because it was there was still rain. that should have stopped in November. And instead it went along with the cyclone and all that we said before. And so many fields were flooded, and they were waiting to plant them and then plant. So now I don't know, maybe in this, but I don't know, Paola, I was thinking on the different effect that the locusts could have during the full planting season. Maybe if they would be there in 4 months, if they wouldn't been passed with the planting season, it would have been even worse. Now maybe if they pass and they don't appear, for those plants that didn't come out yet, well, I don't know, what do you think? Or maybe they ate everything anyway, even the small plants.
Yeah, yes, as far as I know, they eat everything, and the population increased exactly because there was the planting season just.
Okay, so
they exactly cover the growing of the plant, and so the growing of the dimension of the population, so the density. And I have read that in majority of the country, yeah, probably, let's say in June they will decrease, but the farmer have lost one season totally. So from February till June, that is generally the most productive, or anyhow one of the 6-month period, the most important.
Yeah, actually, yeah, my reasoning was totally wrong, because both the planting season and the locust, they are set up on the range. So yeah, there are these. So, and losing a season for a small scale producer, I mean, it's horrible.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
And in addition, we have to say, probably we didn't say enough, that the COVID emergency blocked the
relief.
Yeah, no, I mean the importation, the import of food. So there is even more effect, because it's very difficult to help. I mean, even the World Food Program have difficulties to deliver food, because there is a lot of problem in transport due to the COVID. So the two emergency create even more.
Yeah, because one emergency, the locust, is canceling local production. And the other, that is a global emergency, is disrupting the supply chains of import food, that in this situation is extremely important. But yeah, in that household level, I mean, if we are, all of us is one household somewhere there, and we are affected in this way, what other kind of coping mechanism we can fall back on? I'm asking, I'm wondering.
I would say to foresee prevention of this, but it was to foresee the COVID, it was impossible. Maybe the locust could be somehow maybe predict a little bit in advance, so they could maybe store some food aid, no? Let's say in advance. I don't know.
If we are growing tubers, we could maybe try to harvest them before we know the locusts arrive, or expect that the tubers will be there even once they removed all the plants, all the green plant, I mean. So
I have read that they have a coalition for this specific type of crisis on locusts. There is a group, there is like the locust relief crisis in Africa, and they try to foresee these things, and they try to stock food and all of this, but the dimension of the problem was way bigger for everyone to predict, like all the floodings last year in Somalia and Mozambique and all East Africa, and the cyclones that happened that helped to spread the locusts around Africa. They couldn't foresee the magnitude of this, so now they are in this problem. But they are the FAO also has surveillance for the locusts, but they just couldn't deal with this one.
I think also the one positive thing about it in some countries is like Kenya and Uganda is that the locust plague arrived right after some of their crops have matured. So because then the locust does not eat the fruits, so it was a positive thing because then they will just leave the leaves and leave the fruits. Maybe like if it's maize or corn, they will just eat the leaves and leave the corn. So at least then they will harvest like a little bit. So, but then I can imagine if maybe like a country like Kenya, it's like warm the whole year, so they probably have some of their crops that would after they harvest this one, they will have to move on to plant another more crops. So I think it's gonna mean a different situation this time, that they will not immediately just go into another production. But at least the good thing is that they did not eat the fruits. And yeah, I think it's a good thing. But the other thing is that also that I thought was interesting was, I think when in some countries when this locust was not this much, the local people would find ways to harvest them and eat them and develop different dishes out of them and make different stuff. In some cases, people would gather them and save them for poultry, for chickens, for some birds and stuff. And some of them would mix them with a feed for pigs. And yeah, the problem, which is quite interesting as well, is that they are not allowed to go out because of COVID-19. They are all in their houses. They're not able to go out and chase them from their farms or harvest them or do anything, which I think would even become more of a problem, because then when the locusts are not disturbed by people, I think they find a better place to reproduce, which I think it's going to be a problem as well.
Yeah, there is this very interesting relation between agriculture and locust. There are many species of locusts. The most famous, many of them, they went extinct during the human lifetime in the planet. The most famous example is the Rocky Mountain locust. It was a locust of the Rocky Mountains in North America, and it was also swarming with billions of individuals. And then at the beginning of the 20th century, from one year to the other, it kind of disappeared and never appeared again. And a few years ago, it was declared officially extinct. What it looks like is that these locusts, in spite of swarming in billions, they were laying their eggs in a relatively small area, that and when this area was transformed into cultivated fields by the pioneers of the Far West, the population, the whole species disappeared. So it's we lost locusts, and why I started saying this, I don't remember now.
To highlight the relationship between agriculture. So
yes.
I think that
thank you. Yeah, that was
study
it.
the
I
relationship between some agricultural practices and the biology of the local.
Absolutely. So we have that usually putting some areas into agriculture is a great way of stopping locusts. And actually the pockets where the desert locust is starting with the outbreaks are usually non-cultivated. They are very arid areas. That's why these locusts are so powerful. They start in desert, in very arid areas, and then they are able to build up. And if you notice their movement, the more they build up and swarm, the more they move to first to semi-arid areas, and then to to ecological zone that have more rains toward greener areas until usually they find a limit when forest starts. Forest, a kind of humid, cold forest is not an habitat that they can withstand. And but that was there is a relation between an historical relation between locust and agriculture, both in the effect of locust swarm on agriculture, but also on the effect of the expansion of agriculture on locust species. And we can imagine here we could draw the different positive and negative feedback. So I don't know if we start imagining that locust swarm could drive farmers out of cultivation, this would expand the land available for locusts to lay eggs. So here we would have a positive feedback in favor of locusts and against agriculture. The far west, probably in North America, was a feedback of the other kind, this rapid expansion of agriculture into land that was used by locusts for laying eggs.
Also, we can see, in many countries how they grew with these animals. In Mexico, for example, with hoppers, that they've been eating them since pre-colonial times. They still eat them. They're called chapulines, and would be interesting to know how they managed to evolve together.
What do you mean to evolve together?
So not evolve, but to
find
coexist.
an equilibrium, to find an equilibrium, to live together.
Those I think are not locusts. They are
no, they're hoppers.
Different kind of grasshopper and crickets.
So
yes, those it's because this of the locust is really a superpower. Do you remember in the ecology course, Paola, we speak at some point of the different anti-predatory defenses, and we mention the fact that some species, their defense is to fill the stomachs of all the possible predators, like cicads. Insects that come up in such a huge number that there is at the moment no quantity of predators that can eat them all, and so some of them will reproduce. Locusts do this, but they do this with a superpower then of not just, okay, we reproduce and we die, no, but we start moving and we start tracking the right condition, keeping reproducing. So it's really, and with this, with all the morphological and hormonal and behavioral change. One thing that I was reading about, because in reading and I want to share it with you, and that's the reason why I shared the video of the starling moving of the bird, because of the swarm intelligence. And this is a beautiful concept that I was reading about of how from simple rules of behavior of individual beings emerges an intelligence that is present only in the group, in the single individual. And this occurs when you see the starling. You wonder, wow, how they can do this. It's just if every single starling follow some basic rules. And sometimes they are so basic as do not bump into other starling and keep always the same distance with the 4 or 5 starling around you. and keep moving with them. So from these simple rules, it emerges all that movement, and we can see it in ants. I was reading about ants, and there were these experiments, very interesting. So there was a group of ants and the food source. And the experiment in the laboratory was that the ants they had a different path to go from the ant hill to the food source, and they started from the ant hill. And the researcher will see that after some initial wandering through all the different paths, after some time, all the ants would use the shortest path to the food source. And this is amazing. I mean, it sounds obvious when you see it, but what is amazing is that no ant knows the shortest path or think about in terms of the shortest path. And this intelligence of the group of ants in choosing the shortest path to the food source is just an emergent intelligence from simple rules related to the quantity of specific pheromones that ants deposit on the food source and on the ant hill every time they find the food source. So you can apply this to many, of course, bees and humans. And I was reading that now in some movies where you have how I say, fiction movies like Pixar, where they rebuild the thing with the computer, they use algorithms that have been found for mass swarming in insects or mass movement in animals. They apply it to the crowds of people, and then in the movie, the crowd of people looks like is moving as a real crowd of people move. And yes, that was some part, but it's a very interesting line of thinking. This emergent intelligence not present in any single one of those individuals. And when you try to apply this on humans, yeah, a lot of different and sometimes weird thinking arise.
I think that might have to be the last words of tonight's Aperitempo, because we're running out of time again. 1 hour is very short for this. But we would like to thank you all very much for participating, and especially to our guests for tonight. And then we would also like to say that there has been a lot of requests for publishing the recordings of the Aperitempos officially or publicly, and we would like to do that. So for that, we would also like to ask you, like, for your approval of publishing the recordings, since your voices are all recorded, not all of your faces, since not all of you had the camera, but so that we could feel comfortable with sharing the content.
Yeah. To me, it's okay. Can you put a fake wig on my head in the the fake wig? A wig is fake. Okay. And yes, also from me, thanks to everybody, and especially to Paola for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. Sorry to be late. I couldn't find the link.
But you were not late actually.
So thanks. It's very interesting, and yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
And yeah.
Let's have this conversation about mushrooms and other things. Like, the space is open for everyone. So
do you already have a booked Aperitempo for next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Next week we're gonna talk about migration and food security.
Oh, nice.
You'll receive an email, and of course you're always welcome here.
That's a great topic.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyhow, if you need to invite Alex, do it, because he will be very happy to share.
No, but for sure we will after, when there will be a free Aperitempo, we can organize one about mushroom, as to Alex, as to Paola, as to other people. And I'm the first that I would like to learn more about mushroom.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Nice to see you.
Rosario for
Thank you, Rosario and
topic.
Calvin.
Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Professor.
Ciao,
Arlette
ciao,
and
Calvin.
everyone who organized. And we really appreciate it. We thought it was important.
No, thank you for everything. Ciao, Khalid.
Ciao, ciao, Professor.
Ciao a tutti.
Thank you, Professor Volpato
you,
and Migliorini. Thank you.
Ciao, thank you.